Tensions between the United States and China have increased following the U.S. Navy's interception of the Pacific Voyager, an oil tanker transporting Venezuelan crude to China. The event took place in the South China Sea, an area known for ongoing territorial disputes and regular military activity. The Pacific Voyager, registered under a third country, was on its way to a Chinese port when U.S. forces boarded the vessel, adding a new dimension to the ongoing situation. In response, Beijing criticized the action, describing it as a violation of international law and requesting the vessel's release. Chinese officials stated that the U.S. move challenges their sovereignty and could set a precedent affecting international shipping practices. The incident, which occurred near the Philippines, reflects a shift in U.S.-China relations, now involving energy supply routes in addition to trade and technology. The South China Sea, a significant route for global commerce, is once again a focal point in the broader relationship between the two countries. The United States, under President Trump, maintains that the seizure is in line with sanctions on Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA, and applies to any parties trading with it. U.S. officials explain that these actions are intended to support international sanctions and limit the movement of restricted oil revenues. From China's perspective, this development is viewed as a challenge to its economic interests and international standing. The event has led to concerns among Chinese market participants and officials about possible impacts on energy imports. The U.S. action brings attention to ongoing debates about freedom of navigation, the status of international waters, and the established rules that have guided maritime conduct for many years. Chinese authorities have indicated that they are considering their response, with military planners reportedly reviewing available options. Officials have stated that they expect future actions to be carefully considered. This event is part of a broader pattern of U.S. measures related to China's global role. It follows earlier developments in areas such as trade and technology, which have shaped the current phase of U.S.-China relations. Observers around the world are monitoring the situation, as it has the potential to influence global energy markets and regional stability. Both countries continue to assess their positions, and the international community remains attentive to further developments. China regards the U.S. seizure as a violation of international law, describing it as a departure from established diplomatic protocols and a challenge to the principles that guide international relations. Chinese officials state that Washington is applying its domestic sanctions to global commerce, suggesting that the U.S. is extending its legal authority and potentially setting a precedent for international trade. Beijing maintains that the oil trade with Venezuela is a legitimate transaction between sovereign states, protected by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and notes that such agreements contribute to global economic stability. According to UNCLOS, only the flag state has jurisdiction over ships on the high seas. China asserts that the U.S. did not have the authority to intervene, emphasizing the importance of this principle for freedom of navigation and international shipping. The U.S., while not a party to UNCLOS, generally follows its principles. This makes the recent action a subject of debate and raises questions about the consistency of international norms. China has raised the issue at the UN, describing the seizure as economic pressure and expressing concern about its potential impact on the global trading system and international trust. Beijing suggests that its energy security is the primary concern, indicating that the U.S. action may be intended to limit China's access to resources and affect its economic development. China is encouraging other nations to consider the implications of U.S. maritime actions and is calling for the international community to support the rights of all countries to participate in free and fair trade. The incident is presented as a matter concerning the sovereignty of all trading nations, with China noting that unchecked actions could have broader effects on the global order. China's position is that if such actions are possible against one country, the security of international trade for all nations could be called into question. The U.S. Navy's interception of the Pacific Voyager was a measured operation, intended to demonstrate American commitment to enforcing international sanctions. The tanker, registered in Panama and owned by a Singapore-based company, was tracked from its departure in Venezuela using satellite surveillance and signals intelligence. U.S. analysts observed its route across the Atlantic, collecting information about its cargo and intended destination. The USS John S. McCain was assigned to carry out the operation. Navy personnel boarded the vessel in an orderly manner, securing the crew and cargo before redirecting the ship to a U.S.-controlled port for inspection and legal review. The U.S. government cited a series of executive orders targeting Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA, as the legal basis for the action. These orders extend sanctions to any entity or vessel involved in transporting Venezuelan oil, regardless of flag or ownership. This operation reflects a shift in U.S. policy, moving from financial sanctions and diplomatic measures to direct naval enforcement at sea. The seizure of 2 million barrels of crude oil is a notable disruption to Venezuela's export activities, indicating that the U.S. is prepared to use military resources to support its economic policies. The operation signals to the global shipping industry that U.S. sanctions are being enforced internationally, and that vessels in international waters may be subject to these measures. The overall message is clear. Washington is prepared to use available resources to uphold its strategic interests and enforce international regulations. The legal basis for the U.S. action is a subject of ongoing discussion. Some observers suggest that seizing a commercial vessel in international waters under unilateral sanctions raises questions about the freedom of the seas. Others point out that international law is evolving to address illicit trade, though such measures are typically applied to weapons or terrorism, rather than oil. Venezuela has formally objected to the seizure, describing it as piracy and requesting United Nations involvement to seek the return of its property. This situation highlights a complex area of maritime law, as the enforcement of national laws at sea may have broader implications for global maritime practices. The international community's response will help clarify whether this incident sets a new standard or remains an isolated event. The Pacific Voyager case may contribute to ongoing discussions about the boundaries of maritime enforcement. The Pacific Voyager incident highlights China's reliance on imported energy. Much of China's oil is transported by sea, passing through key areas such as the South China Sea, which are subject to U.S. oversight. The vessel's seizure demonstrates a scenario that has long been considered, prompting Beijing to review its approach to energy security. China may respond by diversifying supply routes, adjusting vessel registration, or evaluating the use of naval escorts. This development encourages a reassessment of the stability of China's energy supply chains. The United States has demonstrated its ability to influence global energy flows, which may affect future policy decisions. For China, enhancing energy security could involve reducing dependence on sea lanes monitored by the U.S. The recent tanker seizure reflects a broader U.S. approach, integrating sanctions, military presence, and international partnerships to address China's influence. By focusing on Venezuela's oil sector, the U.S. addresses a significant area of Chinese economic cooperation. These actions indicate that sanctions are intended to be applied on a global scale. The operation also highlights U.S. naval activity in the South China Sea, conveying a message to both China and regional partners. This strategy is designed to discourage support for governments such as Venezuela's, though it may prompt a measured response from Beijing. Some allies may find reassurance, while others could interpret U.S. actions as assertive, with potential implications for global trade. The overall impact of this approach will depend on its ability to influence China's decisions, or whether it contributes to increased competition between the two countries. Regional security and global commerce remain important considerations as these developments unfold. The Pacific Voyager incident is prompting China to further explore alternative energy routes. Beijing continues to invest in overland pipelines from Russia and Central Asia, and is developing the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor to reduce reliance on maritime routes. The Arctic's Northern Sea Route and the port of Gwadar in Pakistan are being considered as alternatives to the South China Sea and Strait of Malacca. China is also broadening its supplier base, with increased imports from Russia, Central Asia, Africa, and South America. The objective is to establish a resilient, multi-layered energy network that is less dependent on any single route. Recent events involving the U.S. Navy highlight the importance of this approach. For China, energy security increasingly involves building strategic redundancy across continents. The Pacific Voyager seizure represents a notable development in U.S.-China relations, shifting the dynamic from diplomatic statements to concrete actions. While the United States describes the move as sanctions enforcement, many international observers interpret it as a unilateral measure with implications for maritime law. This event may prompt China to consider responses in areas such as cybersecurity, economic policy, or maritime operations. It is also likely to encourage China to continue expanding its naval capabilities and diversify its energy sources. The broader concern is the potential for established global norms to be challenged, as major powers act independently of international consensus. This situation extends beyond an oil dispute, reflecting a significant moment in the evolution of global order and US-China relations. Without efforts to reduce tensions, the international community may experience increased division and uncertainty,